camera 1, camera 2 on speed. You see this little timer up here? Yep. Well, that's at 5, we're at 5 and 9, so it's a couple seconds off. Okay, let's go ahead and mark it.
Mark it. So we docu-series Philippa, take 1.
A little better clap.
Okay.
More effective.
Okay. Docu-series Philippa, take 1.
There you go. Okay, and then your call.
You can step out.
How long are you gonna roll on this?
10.
10? So
Yeah,
put that right on what you did. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Y'all come
Thank you. All right, we're under action. Philippa, stand by. Philippa, just give me 2 seconds after each question, just to have edit room. Okay. Can you tell us your name, organization, and what you do?
My name's Philipa Booyens. I'm a screenwriter for the film 8 Days, and I work with ShareTogether, a nonprofit organization.
What does Share do?
Share combines resources to reach different people in need, and we've been fighting sex trafficking specifically for a while.
How did you get involved in fighting trafficking, particularly with 8 Days and in Lanka? What was that process? How did that start?
So I grew up in a more affluent area that was very sheltered, and trafficking wasn't something I had heard about or knew about much of. And when I did, I thought it was something that happened overseas in faraway places. It was honestly something I didn't want to know about. But it just kept coming up over and over again, trafficking. And we'd moved to Dallas, my husband and I had a mentor, actually several different mentors in my life, start talking to me about trafficking and the porn industry and abuse and what was going on. I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is obviously important because it keeps coming up. And that's kind of how I work in writing is I know something's important if it keeps coming up. So I started researching it. I had a mentor in my life come to me and said, I'm writing a book. I'm taking survivors' stories and telling what really happens to them. And so I started doing that. I'd listen to stories from around the country, different forms of trafficking. I went to visit safe homes and, listened to stories, read stories, and just was overwhelmed with what was really happening in the world that nobody talked about. And it broke my heart. I cried a lot. But I knew that this was important, that their stories get told, because it wasn't. And I was a person that had ignored this. And I knew a lot of people were doing the same thing. And these stories couldn't be ignored. These are people all around us that are being abused and taken advantage of. And we need to hear their stories. We can't allow that to happen.
Since then, how have you actively been fighting the crime? What is your method of supporting?
So I'm a screenplay writer, and as an entertainer, words are very powerful. Words shape culture. They frame how we see the world, and we have a responsibility to tell the truth. It is so easy to lie. It is so easy to make things up. And I think people do it intentionally, but I think a lot of people do it because they just don't know. They don't know what's really happening. They don't know the truth. So as an entertainer, as a writer, I feel a responsibility to tell the truth, to tell the story about what's really happening, what's really going on, so that people know what's happening all around them. And our culture is very much framed by media, by the porn industry, by films we see every day. And it's not an accurate representation. It's not the whole truth. I think I've learned to be very wary of people that are selling you things. And the porn industry has a lot to sell. So I've learned to pay attention to people that have nothing, they're not trying to sell you anything. This is their story. This is what's really happened to them. And they're not trying to get you to buy something or believe a lifestyle that benefits them or their survival.
Have you noticed changes in the crime? You've been fighting this almost a decade. Have you noticed changes, particularly for the victims? And if so, what?
The internet has really become a very big place for trafficking. I think as more and more kids get access to the internet and there's more and more apps that are coming up every day, it's really scary how much and how easy it is to find potential victims and to track them down, to stalk them, to lure them in to trafficking. I think that's become very easy for predators, and it's become harder to, in a way, it's harder to see and to watch. There are a lot of things out there that can track this that I don't think have been used well at all. But I think that's been one of the biggest things. And a lack of parental involvement, I think, has definitely led to this. I've seen a lot, this used to be the runaways, the foster kids were very much targeted, and they are. But kids that are in more affluent households where the parents just aren't involved, they are also becoming very easy targets. And I'm seeing a lot of that happen as well because nobody's paying attention except these predators that are watching all their social media feeds and giving them attention and affirmation.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced, either in filming the film or fighting this fight? Hold on 1 second, pause for me.
Is that AC a problem? I heard it kick on.
Just kick on.
Can you hear it?
Alan, is it AC?
It's slight there, but that can be filtered out. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep going.
If you want me to redo anything, let me know.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
The biggest
Stay
challenges.
right there for 1 second. I'm going to agree with Alan here just for a minute. Okay, thank you. We're good. Some of the toughest challenges that you have faced.
Okay.
What would those be?
When I first started getting involved in fighting this crime, I ran up against a lot of disbelief and pushback. People didn't want to know. And, I was that person, but I found myself getting very angry because I knew what was happening to these kids, to these women, to these people that were being abused. Like, how can you not care? How can you not want to look at this? But as I progressed in this process, we've shown the film around the world, and we had a screening recently where I had a young guy come to me afterwards. We had a panel with experts, with social workers, with law enforcement that were addressing these issues from their perspectives. And this guy comes down to me after the film and he says, "What are you doing next?" I had no idea I was part of the problem, and my friends need to know what this looks like, what's going on. So I realized there's a lack of information. So that, to me, has been the biggest challenge, and I think that's why this series is so important, is we want you to know the truth. We want you to get the information so that you know what's going on with these people and you can help.
What would success look like to you for either a project, a film, or the work that you do in the industry?
As a creative, I want people to care. That's my heart. I want you to care about what's going on around you. These are people, these are children, these are friends, they're family members that, maybe have been forgotten and they shouldn't be. So I want you to care.
Have you received help from state, the federal government? Is there support for this project federally?
There are some great people that work in government and in different agencies. We were able to work with Homeland Security Investigation and ICE on our film 8 days. They helped rewrite the scenes to make them as accurate as possible and helped train our actors, and some of their agents were a part of the film, which was wonderful. We've been able to work with different agencies around the country to educate, to give a visual. That's what 8 Days was. It was a tool to show what's happening in that kind of format. So we have had help in that way, which has been wonderful.
You guys did some work in the Dominican Republic. It was in support of the U.S. Embassy. What was that experience like?
It was wonderful. Yes, the Dominican Republic Embassy invited us down to show the film, to screen the film in several places, and to work with different agencies down there. And from that experience, we were actually able to help push through different government agencies to get brothels shut down and get victims saved, which was incredible.
Why are you involved in this documentary? Why is this documentary series important to you?
We wanted to bring the experts to you. I think there's a lot of people that have opinions, but not everybody knows what's going on. So it's important to know the truth. It's important to listen to experts. I don't consider myself an expert, but I am blessed to know many. So I want you to hear from them, what's really going on, what's really happening as they fight this every day, as they work with survivors and victims and law enforcement and traffickers, so you can get an accurate picture of what's really happening.
Another question on that, what do you hope to accomplish with this long term, and what's the vision?
I think there's a lot of narratives out there that are pushing and promoting abuse. And this is being accepted because of a lack of information, because of a lack of truth. So my heart with this project, my goal is that people understand and see from victims, from people, from counselors and therapists and everyone in between, the truth, so that we can fight for each other and not ever fight for abuse.
Porn. What is the impact of pornography as it relates to minor sex trafficking?
Porn has shaped our culture in so many ways. They're saying that the average age of exposure is 9 to 11 years old, and for many kids, that's before you have sexual education classes. So you're educated by something that isn't real. I'm a writer, like film, TV, it's not real. Reality TV is not real. And we have this, when we see things, when we hear things, even with 8 Days, this is a film that we wrote, and I had so many people come up afterwards to the actors and say, "Are you okay?" Like, yeah, I acted in the film. But we have this inability sometimes, without even realizing it, to not be able to differentiate between reality and what's fiction, especially visually. And I think that's a big reason why porn is a problem, because we're visually seeing things that aren't that are harmful and aren't accurate, and there is a lot of abuse perpetuated within porn that makes these kids and these women very difficult. The things that are expected of them, fantasies that are asked for, that are life-threatening. The average age, the life expectancy in prostitution and trafficking is 7 years. That's how long they last. And a lot of times these kids, the average age of entry, they're saying is about 12 years right now. We know kids that have gone in at 2. which is unthinkable. But like it literally, between drug use and beatings from traffickers and Johns, it's, the fact that people make it out of that is amazing. But it never should happen.
Crystal, this is an off-script question. When you wrote the role of Amber in the film 8 Days, you made a choice to let the viewer hear her thoughts. Why was that important? Why is it important for you that the viewers hear the thoughts of a victim?
I think the film 8 Days was important too because it was the only film at the time, wasn't a documentary, and it wasn't from the perspective of a mother or law enforcement or a father like Taken was. It actually went from the perspective of the victim. So to visually see and to hear what they're going through, I thought was very important. And even reading it, you can do that. You can look at statistics, you can read stories, but to visually see it and to hear their thoughts, I thought was the most impactful way to hear what they're going through and to experience that.
Do you agree with the term sex work? It's getting a lot of attention now. How do you think that impacts the work that you do?
I don't think it's fair. I have a lot of feelings on the term sex work, but to know the amount of abuse that these children and these women go through, to try and use it as an empowering thing, I think is very, it's horrible. And the fact that women perpetuate that, I think, is sickening, because women are literally perpetuating that they should be abused, that's okay. So as a woman, I have a hard time with it because I don't think anybody should be abused, and I definitely don't think that we should ever label abuse as something positive to aspire to.
There's a movement to decriminalize prostitution. How would that impact the environment for minors under 18? Because that's an over 18 law they're trying to impose. How would that impact minors?
The problem with decriminalizing prostitution is that it allows traffickers and buyers no consequences. So right now, where there are consequences in place, they may need to be harsher, they may need to be enforced more, but in the most cases, they are there. When you take that away, it opens the floodgate for more victims. Statistically, what I've seen is that 90% of women in prostitution are trafficked. They're considered forced into it. So when you increase the demand and the industry, you're going to have to force more people into it. And I see that as a huge problem.
Off script, Crystal.
Yeah.
Philipa, what goes through your mind when you think of a 12-year-old child forced to have sex 20 times a day? Or some of the trauma, some of the things that you've seen? What comes to mind?
Like many of you, I have, they say 1 in 4 women are sexually abused, right? And 1 in 8 men. I know, thankfully, I have not experienced that, but I know way too many who have. And to know what they've gone through and seen what they've gone through, what they still experience every day, and I've interviewed these kids, that are now adults that have gone through that experience. So no one should do that. No one should have to experience that. And what I've seen a lot is the dehumanization that happens in this. I said earlier that words are powerful. They frame how we view the world. I spoke to a Homeland Security director, and he said, I hate the term trafficking. It's not accurate. It makes you think of moving people from place to place, and that does happen. But he's like, this is literally sex slavery, where we're really literally treating people as less than human. Women and children are getting branded with tattoos, with cattle prods. They're wearing collars. Their property. They're locked in closets, sometimes cages. So these are human beings, not property. We're people. And as humans, we need to protect each other.
Is there a solution for child sex trafficking?
I think so. I think there are definitely ways that we can make huge progress in this issue, but we need to address demand. There's been a lot of work rescuing victims and rehabilitating them, but it's very hard to rehabilitate someone that's been through this kind of trauma. And when you rescue victims and you put traffickers away, there's just more come up because there's a demand. So when we really want to address this problem, if we really want a solution, we have to address demand. We have to focus on why this is happening and get to the buyers. There needs to be enforced laws on buyers, and we need to educate buyers on what this is, on healthy sexuality as a culture, and value human beings.
This is also off script for Crystal. But you also wrote on the movie I'm Not Ashamed, which is about Rachel Scott, the Columbine shooting. That movie got a lot of attention. Seems that you use your writing gift for these social justice causes. Can you talk a little bit about that experience, which has also had a lot of trauma in it, and how that relates to 8 days, or do you see similarities in behavior? Those are boys shooting up a school, these are men abusing children. Is there a correlation?
That's a very deep question, very complicated. I have a compassionate heart for justice. I want you to care. I don't have time to work on things that don't matter. I want to make the world a better place. So I do dive deeply into the villains, into the characters that aren't making the good choices. I want to understand them and why this is happening so that I can teach from that too, that I can learn and hopefully educate people too on how not to get there, how to make different choices so we don't end up at this place where a 16-year-old's trafficked or where a school has a shooting.
How can people help?
There are so many ways you can help. I believe if you woke up this morning, there's a reason for it. You have gifts and abilities, and when you don't show up, we're all missing out. I didn't think I could do anything as a writer in this issue. For sure, I don't have the gifts to do legislation or lobbying or safe home, but I could write a story. And we're blessed to work in a community of entertainers to be able to put this story out there to show what's really happening. So if your skill set is teaching, if it's cooking, if it's, I don't know what you have to offer, what you can do, but there's absolutely something you can do to help people. I know a tattoo artist that is covering up the tattoo brands from their traffickers. Just amazing way to use your gifts and abilities. So use what's in your hands. What do you have? How can you help people?
Just finish again with your name, last name, and the organization that you support?
My name's Philipa Booyens. I'm a screenplay.
Go again, stand by, action.
My name's Philipa Booyens. I'm the screenplay writer for 8 Days Film, and I work with ShareTogether now.
Cut.
Great job.
Okay.
So I think